How's it going? Thad Brown here with you on the Endgame. Happy April, everybody. It is the day after April Fool's Day. We'll talk about how little interest I currently have in April Fools a little later on. But many bigger stories to get to. The owners' meetings in the books. Joe Brady held court for about 45 minutes. Want to dive into a couple of different things that he had to say. There's a mock draft out there that is driving Bills fans bananas today. We'll talk about why it's not ridiculously crazy. And it is a huge night when it comes to Western New York hockey, because tonight is the night when the Sabres can finally end their 14-year playoff drought. Although the studio is very often in blue and yellow because that's the theme colors for this show, it really is also a night for the Sabres as well, because I believe it's a win the Sabres need to get in. Look, there's any number of ways the Sabres are going to get themselves into the playoffs over the next few weeks. It would take an all-time collapse. And I know Buffalo fans are prepared for the absolute floor to drop out at any moment. But the truth is the Sabres are going to the playoffs this year. It's just a matter of when they clinch and, more importantly, where they end up as a seeding. But in terms of the drought being over, it's funny that we've gotten to this point with really so little pomp and circumstance. I think Sabres fans, and I might have been with them too, over the last few years, imagine that making the playoffs would be a giant achievement. And it still will be. It'll be a big night if the Sabres do finally lock that spot up tonight. But as well as this team has played all year, just making the playoffs is not going to be good enough. There's going to be more expected from this team. Again, that doesn't mean that this is a night that gets overlooked. When you think about all the different things the Sabres have been through, the general managers, the tanking year for McDavid and Eichel, and then how Eichel didn't work out, and then how Eichel became, he went in a few years from a guy the Sabres, or at least their fans, would literally give everything for in terms of, we will donate a season to get this guy, to the number one person they wanted out of town, to where there was almost a rivalry with Eichel, even when he came back as a member of a different team. All through all that stress, all that failure, all the disappointment, Sabres fans have finally landed on a spot where, like I said, it's crazy to think that just making the playoffs will not be good enough. This will be an awesome night. Tonight will be the celebration of everything the Sabres have accomplished for the last 4 months, how different this team is, how confident they are. They just had a 3-game losing streak. They were down 2-0 in the game after that, came back and won it anyway. A couple nights ago against the Islanders, blew a 2-1 lead late, didn't matter. 3 minutes later, they scored again, won the game anyway. Tonight will be a celebration of all of those things that the Sabres have figured out and have gotten right and have been successful at since the beginning of December when this streak began. But it's going to be a one-night celebration. It's going to be, and maybe, to be honest, it might go on the next couple of weeks until the playoffs actually begin. But there is going to be more expected of this team, or at least more hoped for from this team. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that tonight is going to be ignored. Tonight is going to be appreciated, or whenever the Sabres clinch. But it's just crazy to think that all the years that Sabres fans have spent, especially over the last decade, wondering when it would finally be their team's turn, when they would have a chance to finally get back to the postseason. And then we get here, and although, yeah, it's going to be a big deal, this year, because of where the Sabres are, it's going to feel like a stepping stone, and appropriately so. So congrats to Sabres fans. Congrats to all the Western New York hockey fans that have been living and dying, and mostly dying with this team over the last 14 years. The next couple weeks are going to be fun, because there won't be the pressure of playoff success. That'll come at the end of April. We'll get to that. But for the next few weeks, this will be, I think, more a celebration of what has been accomplished this year than any worry about what might be to come. And it's cool. And it's good. And I look forward to hopefully being able to be at Sabres games, playoff games this year, seeing the parties outside. The atmosphere outside a Sabres playoff game has generally been really good, going back to 15 years ago when that happened. This year, when it is the first year back, I expect it to be ridiculous. I can't wait to get to that. But for the next couple weeks, for all you Sabres fans out there, enjoy the fun. Enjoy the celebration. Enjoy the appreciation of how this team seemingly has finally turned a corner. And whether this becomes a year after year thing remains to be seen. There's certainly every reason to believe this is not one good year. This is the first of many. But even if it is one good year, it's been a damn good year. And taking the time to appreciate that and enjoy it, I know Buffalo fans probably will, that's what the next 2 weeks or so will probably be about. All right, let's turn our attention to the Bills here. Today, ESPN released another of their mock drafts, and it's the time of year where you can close your eyes and type keys on a keyboard, and you'll probably end up on somebody's mock draft. Today's mock draft was one of those where they bring 3 or 4 guys in, and then they rotate pick after pick after pick. And the Bills ended up drafting, according to Matt Miller from NFL Draft Scout, who's awesome. He had the Bills pick at 26, and his selection today was corner Avion Terrell from Clemson. And that got a number of Bills fans a bit apoplectic, we'll say. Because the idea of the Bills taking a corner, not to mention a corner that had a hamstring injury at his pro day recently, with their first round pick, is not what I think most people are hoping for. And there's a lot of obvious reasons why a lot of fans would have a problem with that. Number one, there are other needs on this team that would seem to be more important. Edge is one. Interior defensive line is another. Linebacker right this second is absolutely a need. Wide receiver is always a need, it seems like lately. Any of those spots, I think, would make more sense to most people than corner would. And then on top of that, the Bills just spent a first-round pick on a corner last year. So what is the logic in terms of using so many high-level assets at a position where neither of the guys you're going to draft is the guy who's already a really close to elite player there, a top 10 player there in Christian Benford? So I understand the angst about using another high draft pick or a mock draft that projects the Bills to use a high draft pick there. And this is not the only one. There have been other spots where I've seen corner. Now, it's not the most prevalent pick for the Bills. I think edge has generally been that, although it's still fairly mixed. You get down to pick 26, people are not going to have any idea who a team is going to pick there. So you're not going to get most likely 1 or 2 guys who have more than 15, 20, 30% of the mock drafts. But corner is the one that certainly, of the choices that are out there, makes the least sense. Now, I will say, I appreciate Brad Coyle, by the way, out there on X, who, when I was tweeting about this or posting about this on X earlier, he actually got a response from Matt Miller about why he thought corner made sense for the Bills at pick 26. So here's what Matt Miller said on X to one of the Bills fans who wasn't a jerk about it, just kind of said, hey, what are you thinking here? Matt Miller said, a third corner for the Bills is not a backup. My thought process was Terrell replaces Taron Johnson or starts if Hairston isn't ready in 2026. With the edge group wiped out in the draft they did and a bad defensive tackle class, it was also a best player available play for me at a position of some need. You go through what he's saying there, and I do think there are 2 main points that you should draw, 2 main conclusions you should draw about why a number of people in the draft world keep giving the Bills a corner. Number one, as Matt Miller points out there, corner is certainly some level of need for the Bills. And as I pointed out on X today too, the way the Bills' corner room is right this second, the Bills are a Christian Benford injury away from a 3-alarm fire at that position, as it stands right this second. If you don't have Benford, let's say Benford tears a bicep lifting weights in the next month, what the Bills have left at corner is a first-round pick from last year in Max Hairston that has yet to prove he can play the position. And obviously, injury was a big reason for that last year. He was kind of on the Cole Bishop train of he got hurt in camp, you get left behind, and by the time you get to the season, there isn't an opportunity for coaches as much as they want to coach up a guy to make up for all he's missed in training camp, because training camp is the primary part of the year when you're installing everything. And then when you get into the season, the in-season work week is about game planning for whatever game is that Sunday. You don't have time to go back and reteach that 4 weeks or whatever was missed. So Hairston got way behind and just couldn't make it up. Does that mean that he can't play in the NFL? I don't know. It does not mean that on its own, but it certainly means that we haven't seen that he can play yet. So without Christian Benford, your number one option is still at best a theory. Now, a theory with 4.2 speed, and those theories tend to work out more often than they don't, but it's still a theory. And beyond that, then you're looking about maybe taking D. Alford away from his spot at nickel and having him play outside. He can do that, but that's not his primary job. You're hoping Dorian Strong potentially comes back from the neck injury that Brandon Beane said earlier this week the Bills were still uncertain about. There aren't many good options for the Bills at corner if Benford for some reason gets hurt. So until that changes, corner is going to be looked at not ridiculously by people around the country as a position of need. Right this second, the Bills 100,000% need help at corner. Now, it doesn't have to be a first-round pick, and we've talked about on this show that I think the most likely scenario is that the Bills go out and sign somebody who's available, maybe even Tre'Davious White, to be the, okay, if we have some sort of problem and we need to put somebody in who's not a total rookie, who has some sort of floor, this is the guy who will do that. Even the Bills take a corner like Terrell at the end of round one. There's no guarantee that guy can play either, as we've seen with Max Hairston. So using a round one corner doesn't even solve the problem in terms of the safety net part of it, as well as probably a veteran free agent signing would. So I'm not even saying that a first-round corner even addresses the issue that most people are using as an excuse to give the Bills a first-round corner in the first place. But that issue is there. That need is still there. The other conclusion that I think you got to draw about why the Bills keep getting saddled with corners in mock drafts for round one is that this draft is not very good. You look at the top 10 in this draft, right? Or really the top 9 after Fernando Mendoza. We could have a top 9 where teams take a running back, a safety, and 2 off-ball linebackers. Those 3 positions are probably the bottom 3 spots when it comes to the list of high leverage positions in the NFL. And we might have half of the top 10 almost be made up of those 3 spots. That tells you where this draft is at. There is not a lot of high-end talent. Now, it's pretty deep, especially at edge and receiver. So you can get playable guys deep into round 2 and round 3. But in terms of what the Bills are doing at pick 26, this is not a draft that's going to have a lot of first-round talents. The number I've heard, haven't seen one lately, but the general number of round 1 grades that I think has been pushed around is 12. So pick 26, in terms of what type of player you're getting, is more of a mid to late second rounder. Keep in mind that very rarely is there a year where someone will say, where teams will say that there are 32 first-round graded players available. Most years it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 20. So in a year where there's 12, the level of what the Bills are going to get in round 2 is significantly worse. And what that means is, I think it's reasonable to expect surprises, not just from the Bills, but from everybody picking at the back half of round 1. You might see a team, and I think you'll probably see a few teams that are going to make a pick based more on just how good the player is than what a team particularly needs. Because you're going to be in a position where with a draft that already starts out without a lot of high-end talent, if you think there's a guy that is ridiculously well graded at the end of round 1, it could very easily be a situation where that guy is so much better than everything else available, according to your own board, that you're going to take him no matter what your particular team need is. You always hear teams say best player available. And for the most part, that's more of a talking point than it is in actual strategy. But at some level, if the best player available is so much better than the guys that are at the positions you might have a need at, then best player available makes more sense. And I don't think that'll happen for the Bills because it's not like corner in general is ridiculously better off as a position than edge or receiver or some of the other, again, positions that are of more need to the Bills. And even defensive tackle, that might work out well for Buffalo because this is not a very good interior defensive line draft at all. Maybe one of the worst we've seen in a few years, but it might mean that the best one or two guys are still available to Buffalo 26, and that would make more sense than taking a corner at that spot. Bottom line, though, expect surprises, especially in the back half of round one. Expect a few teams to go off the board when it comes to what they might need. And if you're Buffalo, and if you like a guy like Terrell that much, then taking him over in this draft, for example, the next two guys that go after Buffalo's pick in this mock draft ESPN put out today are, so Casey Concepcion goes to the Niners. I'll address that in a minute. But then it's Caden McDonald, the second best defensive tackle in this draft. Another corner to the Chiefs, a safety, but not Thieneman or Caleb Downs. This is Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, who belongs in that spot. And then Cassius Howell and R. Mason Thomas, two edges go at the end. Now, look, we talked about what the Bills' primary needs are, right? Receiver and edge, okay? In this particular mock, the next 6 picks, and let me see if I can find the next. All right. So the next 10 picks have 3 edges and 2 receivers, okay? Cassius Howell, let's go to the edges first. Cassius Howell goes 5 picks after the Bills. Remember, Cassius Howell, who I like and I think the Bills should pick, has the shortest arms almost ever of any edge ever taken. And players under 32-inch arms very rarely succeed. So it's not like that guy is such a clean and good prospect that the Bills have to take him over a corner. The other 2 edges are R. Mason Thomas and TJ Parker. Solid guys. Neither one of them, I think, is going to blow you away. So again, is there a world where the Bills look at those 3 edge prospects and say, that's not changing our team? You really could say that about anybody down there, but I think it makes a lot of sense. As for the receiver prospects, it's Casey Concepcion, who I love too, and Denzel Boston, who I'm a little less high on. As we talked about before with the Bills, when it comes to receiver, because you have Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid and DJ Moore, who are all guys who can be screen options, run after the catch options, I don't know if getting another one of those guys makes a ton of sense. If I were the Bills, I'd rather get a downfield, bigger body type player. Get me somebody who can replace Keon Coleman for what Coleman hasn't done for you. Well, Casey Concepcion's not that guy. Casey Concepcion is a supercharged version of Khalil Shakir, which I think is awesome to have. I would not be stunned at all if Concepcion is the best receiver in this draft. But I don't think he quite fits the Bills. Now, Boston would fit the Bills. I'm not a huge Denzel Boston fan, but of the 2 receivers, I would like that pick better. Bottom line, you go through the other 10 picks, or the end game, if you go through the 10 picks or so after Avion Terrell, there's no one there that I'll sit there and tell you is a game changer for the Bills. Good players, sensible players, players who could pop. But in the world where Brandon Beane potentially sees Terrell as a notch or 2 better talent, I can see the Bills taking it. Now, I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, more likely than not, the Bills are not taking a corner in round 1 for a number of the reasons we brought up. Not to mention Terrell, by the way, 5'11", 180, built kind of small to play corner. Not that he can't. And obviously, the Bills have a small corner with their last first-round pick in Max Hairston. So it's not like the prototype is terrible. But not a guy that is, in his own right, so physically dominant that if you're a Bills team that has needs somewhere else, that you just can't stay away from Terrell. So I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's a sensible pick. But for the Bills fans who I think woke up this morning and looked at that mock draft and said, what are you guys doing? I can understand the thinking behind it. And until the Bills add somebody else to that corner room, corner is going to remain a pretty serious area of need. Like I said, among the news items this week, Joe Brady spoke at the owners' meetings and was there 45 minutes First time as the head coach taking questions at an event where coaches take questions. That's where the pictures are taken. I don't know if you saw, but Joe Brady sat in the front row of the picture. I don't know why they put him in the front row. He's like 6'3". I mean, how many of us have been to like elementary school or, U10 baseball pictures where the small people go in front and the big people stand in back? Joe Brady's a big person. Joe Brady belongs in the back row. Why they put him on the front row to look like he's 8 inches bigger than every other coach next to him is beyond me. But anyway, that was the event where Joe Brady addressed the media this week. Couple things that really stood out to me. Number one, and this is the one that I think got most attention in terms of people cover the Bills, people that follow Bills. Brady talked about Dalton Kincaid and the knee injury and made the point that, or really talked about how the Bills are going to go forward with Kincaid and how he manages the injury. The emphasis there is the word managing, because it seems like this is something that the Bills are going to have to do quite a bit going forward.
There's a lot of things that, he's pushing through that you guys might not see. But I think some of it is just learning how to play with certain elements of some movements that it might not feel great, and he's had to push through that. But when he's out there, we're better. That's undeniable. And getting a plan with our strength staff, with our science, performance team of figuring out what that looks like week to week. Like, how much does he have to practice so that he's ready to go? What do we have to do with his movements? Because I'm understanding how important he is, right? And I do believe practice is important, but I also don't want a guy where he does so much in practice that he can't be the same person in the game. And so figuring out the ebbs and flows of it.
The important words to hear there are learning how to play, getting a plan with our strength staff, figuring out what that looks like, how much does he have to practice so he's ready to go. You don't hear it right away, or at least I did not. But the more you listen to it and the more you see the words kind of laid out in front of you, the more you realize that this PCL injury is apparently not going to go away anytime soon. This is going to continue to be a part of the Dalton Kincaid story. Now, I'm not going to sit here and play a doctor on TV. There are enough people who do that on X. And the one I trust the most is, of course, Dr. Kyle Trimble at Banged Up Bills. And what he said about the Brady comments and the Kincaid injury in general is that if you have a surgery on this injury, it's still fairly similar to a rehab in terms of like how well it is able to repair things. So the number one question people have asked about the Kincaid situation is, if he's had this for 2 years, why aren't the Bills doing surgery on it? And Banged Up Bills is not the only spot I've seen this, but essentially the answer is that the surgery is not going to be that much better. As long as there is, as Banged Up Bills put it, there's no significant instability being shown, then there's no need for anything beyond the rehab. If the rehab is getting you to a point where it's not unstable, then there's no need for surgery. But as Banged Up Bills points out, and this is the smartest thing that he says all the time, and this is the reason why I go to him, because he will point this out, that we don't have all the answers. We're not there. We don't see what's up with Kincaid's knee. We don't know everything that's happening, because there's certainly a part of this that the knee might have things going on medically that complicate doing a surgery or make doing a surgery not worthwhile. So the answer to the question, the short answer to the question about why Kincaid has not gotten surgery on this knee is simply, it's likely that it won't help any more than rehab is, which frankly is more frustrating, because obviously with any of us who've ever gotten hurt, anything, broken, torn, whatever, you go to your doctor and your doctor will usually say, well, let's try physical therapy. Let's try rehab. And then if that doesn't work, we'll do the surgery. It doesn't seem like choice B is available for Kincaid in this case, which means the Bills are going to have to manage it. Now, there's a fair question to be discussed about whether or not Brady even needed to reveal that, but we were probably going to figure that out at some point anyway, if this is the new reality for Dalton Kincaid. It's unfortunate, too, because Kincaid is very much better for this offense. The Bills' EPA per play last year was almost double with Kincaid on the field than with him off. There are circumstances behind it. None of the Bills' interceptions happened with Kincaid on the field last year, or maybe one did. So there's a little bit of luck there. Same thing with fumbles. Kincaid was a little bit right place, right time. But you don't need detailed analytics to tell you that Kincaid helps the offense. Just watch him play for a little bit. The guy's one of the more athletic tight ends you'll ever see. So the Bills want to get him on the field as much as possible. And if they have to manage his knee injury to do it, then so be it. But it's frustrating because he is still at this point one of the top 3 pass catchers on this team with DJ Moore and Khalil Shakir. So the good news is the Bills have not put themselves on the hook with a contract too much for Dalton Kincaid. They've picked up the 5th-year option. His cap hits for the next 2 years are going to be $4 and $8 million and some change. For a high-level athletic tight end, that's pretty good business. There's no issue with that at all. The question will become, do the Bills give him a big money extension? Because when you sign Dalton Kincaid to a long-term contract, at least sitting here right now, that's going to be an 8-figure-a-year type deal. Maybe not high into the 8 figures, but probably 8 figures, assuming that there's some healthy football in front of them. So, but from the salary, from the financial point of view, the Bills are taking a pretty low-risk bet on their former first-round pick to see what they can get out of it. The real risk for this year is that right now you're probably building the offense around him as one of your top options on the team, as I think most teams would, who are trying to make use of Kincaid. So if Kincaid's going to have to manage the knee injury all year, you worry about, is he going to be available in January? And we might even get to the Joey Bosa conversation with Kincaid, to where the same conversation we were having about Bosa last year, to where if Kincaid just shows up in January and has 3 good games, then the whole thing is worth it. If he plays 3 games in October, 1 game in November, 2 in December, but is really good in the playoffs, like he was against Denver, then it's all good. And that might be the best bet the Bills can make with Kincaid. But the news that Brady revealed, that the Bills are probably going to have to load manage Kincaid, is a little bit distressing going forward. Now, again, going back to the medical descriptions that I've seen in the analysis of that I've read, it's very possible Kincaid can just be fine. That there's not going to be any more issue, that the knee will be stable, and he will be able to move forward mostly normally. It just doesn't seem like it's very likely at this point that Kincaid is going to have that healthy a knee. It's an unfortunate, again, because he's a really good receiving talent who can certainly make an impact in the Bills' passing game. I've always said that he's such a weakness as a blocker. You're really missing a lot of what you want to get out of a tight end in the NFL in 2026, because one of the main benefits of a good tight end is that you put him on the field and teams don't know if you're going to use that tight end as a blocker or a receiver. With Kincaid, you pretty much know what he's going to do. If he's on the field, the Bills are probably not running the ball. Even if last year, I will say that the EPA or the yards per carry for the Bills last year were better with Kincaid on the field than him off. So him being on the field for running plays is showing, or at least last year, showed a benefit. Obviously, the Bills want to make sure he's on the field as much as possible. It's just going to take a little more work, apparently, and maybe even a little bit of luck to make sure that happens. The other comment from Brady that I really found interesting was kind of off the beaten path of general social media. He said that he did not watch the Patriots in the Super Bowl. I think the question was probably from a New England reporter. They wanted to, play up a little bit the budding rivalry between the Bills and the Patriots. By the way, Mike Vrabel, in a little joke at the end of the press conference session, because all the AFC coaches go at the same time, he walked over to Joe Brady's name card and crumpled it up like he's just talking trash. And it was a joke. Everybody thought it was funny. I know some Bills and Patriots fans, as people do these days in social media, took it far too seriously. But Brady did say he did not watch the Super Bowl that the Patriots were in last year. And he explained further about, did I mess that up? I might have messed up the soundbite here. Let me see. Hang on. Let's see what this does. Oh, there it is.
I'll watch the Super Bowl when I'm a part of it. And, I go back and I watch the game and I understand all. I'm not like that game never happened. But, it goes back to when I was in New Orleans. I was part of the Minneapolis Miracle. Thanks, Steph. I was a part of, the pass interference against the Rams. Thanks, Chrome. And, so some of those games after that, I was like, look, man, we put so much into this profession, and I want, when I get to be a part of that game, I'll watch it when I get to be a part of it.
Found that interesting that Joe Brady does not watch Super Bowls. The question was asked, you've not watched any of them, right? And he said no. It sounds a little off, right? Like, why would you not watch the Super Bowl? You're a coach in the league, especially a team that you're going to have to deal with the next year that really is going to be significantly unchanged, mostly unchanged going into the next season. Why wouldn't you watch it? And Brady did say that he'll go back and watch the film of the game from a studying point of view, but he will not sit down and watch the game. And the thing that, again, I kind of come back to with that is, like I said, it does kind of sound like the Bills head coach is a little off. Like, why would you not watch the Super Bowl, right? It doesn't make sense. You play in the league. This is the pinnacle of the season. You don't watch it because you're mad about not getting there? It sounds a little not normal, right? And then you look at what other things Joe Brady, kind of other habits or the things that are part of his personality. Shorts all the time is a thing with Joe Brady. He will walk into every single game, or at least has so far, in a t-shirt and shorts. Doesn't matter if it's August and 80 or January and 5 below. Joe Brady shows up to the game and walks around the field pregame in a t-shirt and shorts. Let me tell you, it's nuts. As someone who's got to be out there for 3 hours during the game, I can't imagine him doing that. And it will be interesting when we get to winter to see what he wears on the sidelines, because Joe Brady, before this year, has always been up in the booth. I'm pretty sure he's going to be more protected for during the game. But regardless, it's just another thing about the head coach. It's a little wrong, right? But when you think about Bills head coaches, the last few of them at least, or at least I'll tell you about the ones I've dealt with, being a little off is kind of par for the course. Sean McDermott, when he first came to Buffalo, was very much not a people person, not someone who related well to people. He got better there, and I think give him credit for that. I think there was an effort made, and he improved that area. But you want to talk about a little off, Sean McDermott, when he started in Buffalo, was a little off. Rex Ryan, do I need to say any more about being a little off? Doug Marrone, not your typical relatable dude. Dick Duran was ridiculously human, very nice to people, said hi, acknowledged you, genuine. People thought that was a little off from the point of view of being a head coach. So Joe Brady having a weird personality trait between wearing the shorts and not watching the Super Bowl, I think it's actually probably a good sign. That means that this is a guy who's cut out for the job. I've always thought, too, that when you're a head coach and you have to work these ridiculous hours, live with this intense scrutiny, the pressure that comes with not only your own career, but the career of like 100 people around you, the hopes and dreams of a city and a fan base of millions, I don't think those jobs are cut out for regular people. You have to be a unique dude to even want to live in that pressure cooker for a regular basis. And if you are that maniacally driven, that committed, and that talented at what you do, I do tend to think that to have an exorbitance in this one area as a human, it means you're probably going to be a little more deficient somewhere else. And that's not to say that not watching the Super Bowl is deficient, but if you think about every person is kind of a bar graft of your, X smart, X strong, X determined, whatever. I think we're all limited in what we have. Like there's no one out there that's 1,000 in every area. So if you're a 98 out of 100, like if most of us are between 40 and 60 and everything, if you're a 90 out of 100 in the things that make you a good coach, then you might be a 20 or a 10 somewhere else. And very, very generally, non-scientifically, I would be fired as any psychologist in about 3 milliseconds. It does seem like that theory fits for recent Bills head coaches. And for Joe Brady, for a guy who doesn't want to watch the Super Bowl because he didn't go, because he's mad about it, and also a guy that wears shorts no matter what the temperature is, and to be honest, I am a card-carrying member of the extended shorts time of year group, party, whatever you want to call it. So I'm generally on Joe Brady's side, but my limits are drawn before his are, apparently. it does seem like those characteristics or that mix of a personality fits like a glove when it comes to being an NFL head coach. I know the things that matter are how well the players play, how many games the Bills win, but sitting here right now in April, and we're trying to pick up the little breadcrumbs about Joe Brady to determine if this is a good move for the Bills, I look at Joe Brady not wanting to watch the Super Bowl as an absolute positive. This is a guy who fits the mold of what it usually takes to do this job in the NFL, even if it's kind of a weird way to get there. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, what else I got for you? I'm going to kind of clean out the notebook here. I got a bunch of things I want to get to. I've been kind of pushing the tush push issue a couple days. Let me get that off my chest. April Fool's Day. It's done. It's over in America. I'll explain why after a break. My name is Thad Brown. This is the Endgame. You're watching Rochester First. The kids who know better than to mess around with April Fool's jokes because they're stupid now, they all call it Rock One. We're back right after this. Thad Brown back with you here on the Endgame. It is Thursday, April the 2nd. Happy Easter, everybody. Coming up over the weekend. Looking forward to getting back to eating desserts again. I gave that up for Lent. It's a tradition for me every year. In part because after Thanksgiving and Christmas and Super Bowl and road games with the Bills, there's a number of excuses that I have to eat terribly in the months between November, December, January, and February. By the time we get to Lent and the few weeks, the 6 weeks before Easter, I need a cleanse. So my annual cleanse is no sugar. And although that has helped, I do feel better. When I get the door back opened up to where I can enjoy them peanut butter eggs on Sunday, some fine Easter bread, little Danish, little fun breakfast in the morning, it's going to be a good weekend for me for sure. So hope everybody enjoys their Easter, enjoys their Passover, whatever you're celebrating coming up here this weekend should be a good time. Speaking of April, right? So today is April 2nd. Yesterday was April 1st. And it used to be, not even that long ago, that April Fools was an internet tradition. I mean, there's no better place to create fun and entertaining pranks than on social media, where people can impersonate Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, and immediately make you think the Bills have traded Josh Allen to the Patriots for 5 draft picks. And there was a time, maybe 8-10 years ago, where that stuff would be pretty common and fairly hilarious on April Fools. But a couple of incidents happened this week that I think maybe showed a little bit that April Fool's isn't what it used to be. And I think in large parts because social media has so little trust that comes with it already. You can't go on X right now and skim through a feed. And let me tell you, if you do, let me rephrase that. If you don't go to X on a regular basis, God bless you. You are living a much better life than the rest of us. I will tell you that I have to be on X for my job. It's probably true. That doesn't mean that I couldn't reduce some of the time I'm on X. But as someone who's on that app way too much and who also spends probably far too much time on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok as well, the percentage of utter BS that is communicated on those apps is rising quickly and has continued to rise over the last couple of years. And although the problems and the issues with that are much more serious than April bleeping Fool's Day. But April Fool's Day has been a victim. There was not a whole lot of junk that went out on April Fool's this year. And I was glad for that because there's already too much you can't trust on social media to where that stuff is funny anymore. And then even the attempts at April Fool's jokes I thought didn't really work really well. The one close to home here in Western New York was apparently Deion Dawkins. Now, I think many of you might have seen the story. Deion Dawkins talks with some, I don't know, YouTuber or some influencer. I think Neon was the name. Did an interview where he said that, or the interviewer asked Deion, if you could double your salary and go play for the Dolphins instead of the Bills, would you? And Deion said, yep. He said, Bills fans be trying to cook me. And then he said, yeah, I would leave. And he says, hey, want to be loyal to loyal? Then tell them to watch their mouth, referring to Bills fans. Now, he followed it up by saying, I'm just kidding. The Bills are too much like family. But he didn't quite make it clear that he was still good with the Bills, that this was not something he was seriously thinking. And we spent a good day on March 31st on social media wondering if Deion Dawkins was legitimately upset with Western New York and or the fan base. And to be honest, I was someone this year that talked about how the Bills might be right to consider a Deion Dawkins trade. The idea being that you move on from a player a year too early instead of a year too late. He's still a good player. I thought his season last year wasn't as good as he's been. He's getting older. Perhaps it's a sign of a decline. So you want to trade as high as you can on an asset and move on. Now, it didn't happen for a number of good reasons. Number one being the salary cap. But whether there was any reaction to Deion from that in particular, or a general reaction from the fan base this year that wasn't as high on Deion, at least the play on the field part, as has been the last few years. Deion remains absolutely unmatched when it comes to his community involvement. Beloved in Western New York for good reason. But on the field, I didn't think it was as good a year, and I wasn't the only one who thought that. And if Deion had a reaction to that, people were wondering if the interview was kind of his way of verbalizing it. And then, so that happened March 30th and 31st. April 1st, Deion posted on his Instagram feed, like one of those graphics you'll see on social media that says, Dawkins traded to the Miami Dolphins. Now, there's no doubt in anyone's mind that it was a fake thing the moment Deion put it out there. And the day that it was posted on certainly helped to draw that conclusion quickly. It wasn't particularly entertaining, though. It was just kind of a head scratching, like, okay, yeah, that's fake, but why are we doing this? Is this supposed to be funny? And Deion Dawkins, let me tell you, most of the things that guy thinks of are pretty damn funny. This did not fall into that category. This was not some of Deion's best work. And it still was a little confusing because on April 1st, Deion just posted the picture and that's it. And he posted a caption that said, y'all got what you want. So although it was April 1st, and I think we all knew that the trade wasn't real and that Deion was probably messing around with us, coming off the interview, that was still a little bit of a head scratcher. I think people were not clear about what exactly Deion was going to do. Now, Deion has since, and I don't know if a lot of people have seen this, but in the last 14 hours, Deion, on the night of April 1st, posted a video that started with the interview where it seems like he's mad and then went into other sound clips of Deion, how much he appreciates the fans during a game, how much he appreciates their support in an interview. To be honest, the video Deion posted late on April the 1st was really well done and really emotional in terms of how he expressed his connection to the Bills. Of all the things, if this was all one big setup, and it seems that way, the finish was cool. The finish was a nice homage to Bills Mafia. So if you haven't seen it, go to Deion's Instagram page. I might put it on my X to give you a link there. That was really well done. Like I said, the whole big extravaganza, which now, because Deion at the end of the good video, he goes, gotcha. The whole April Fool's extravaganza, to me, again, not some of Deion's best work. And I think a part of that is in the current social media culture, we deal with so much BS on a regular basis. There's no special day for it anymore. April Fool's Day is no longer April 1st. It's just about 365 days of the year now. So when we get to April 1st, we don't find it anywhere near as funny. Now, to be honest, I was never a huge April Fool's fan to begin with. I like a good prank, same as the next person. And my family will tell you, I am absolutely the person that will try and deadpan something that is totally incredulous to get somebody to believe it. on a daily basis. My daughter rolls her eyes. The moment I go into it, she can tell right now, I'll start saying, well, and she would say, Dad, stop. So I'm 100% like prank guy. I'm down with all that. Never been a huge fan of April 1st as a joke day, and much less now, considering the world we live in. And then if that wasn't enough, and this is not really a social media thing, but I think it does kind of speak to the environment that we all deal with in terms of our content and what we digest in the world, what's inputted to us. The Washington Wizards, legendary basketball franchise, did a April 1st halftime prank during their game on Wednesday night. They brought a fan out and they blindfolded him. They said, if you can make a half-court shot blindfolded, we'll give you 10 grand. So the guy fires the ball off, and to be honest, it was fairly well online. As blindfolded half-court shots go, this one was pretty solid. But what the Wizards did was, after he shot the ball blindfolded, they're like, yeah, good job. How about that? You won the 10 grand. They brought a check over. The mascots are next to him. Everybody's high-fiving. And this lasted maybe 20 seconds. And then the on-court host was like, gotcha. April Fool's joke. No 10 grand for you. Now, what they did say during the game was that the fan was going to win courtside seats to a game next year in an autographed jersey, which is, in the world of the NBA, that's a multi-$100 prize. That's probably $1,000 plus prize, even for a franchise as terrible as the Wizards. I mean, the signed jersey is probably a couple $100, 2 courtside seats, easily in the $500 range. The team might be bad. It's still Washington, D.C., though. It's a big market. So you're getting a sizable prize out of it. And it didn't seem like the person was that upset. And to be honest, if it were me, I'd feel a little stupid at first. But if you said to me, hey, do you want to feel dumb for 15 seconds in exchange for a pretty cool $1,500 prize? I think a lot of us would sign up for that. So I wasn't as off-put as many other people were. However, the joke did not fly at all. And the Wizards today have already apologized. Now, they said that everybody involved was an actor, including the alleged fan. And this was just their way of trying to have some April Fool's hilarity. And not too dissimilar from the Deion Dawkins idea, it fell flat. Now, whether that one is part of the point I'm making here about the entire world of social media is up to you. But I think the bottom line is these two jokes have kind of shown that the idea of April Fools as a fun, unique day no longer exists, because we spend too many days already trying to cut through the BS we have to deal with on social media. We don't need a day when people do it because they think that it's funny. People are already doing it to make money. There's enough profiting out there from posts that are utterly incorrect to have another day when the people who will not take advantage of you by posting things that are garbage are suddenly posting garbage for one day because it's supposed to be hilarious. We don't need it. And I think the idea of April Fool's Day is perhaps gone forever, which is, like I said, fine with me, even as someone who likes pranks. Okay, tush push. Been teasing this for like 3 shows now. So the NFL has said that they are not going to have any tush push legislation. That play is not going anywhere. So Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, still very much in your fantasy league, a giant piece to have at quarterback because they're going to score a number of 1-yard rushing touchdowns. I got to say, I am disappointed that this play is going to stay. Not because I think the Eagles are getting some sort of unfair advantage. And I got to say, that's all it looks like right now. Last year, when there was a big tush-push controversy, I was 100% behind the idea that it's potentially dangerous, and I still think that could be true, and that it's just a bad play for the league, and that's why the league wanted it out of. It talked about getting the play out of what the league does on a regular basis. Right this second, it looks like everybody's just pissed off that the Eagles were winning Super Bowls and making it look easy. There's no other way to draw a different conclusion. Because if you're really against the tush push, there was actually momentum to get rid of it this year. Most people who watch football were not into the play anymore. And for the NFL to just be like, we're fine now. It certainly makes it look like this was all about the Eagles being good. But separate of that, I do think it's a play we don't need. I think, number one, it just looks bad. It is not visually appealing. There's really nothing about it that's football. It's rugby. It's let's just push a bunch of people forward and get 1 yard. And as much as I do like the idea of there are less punts because now you get the 4th and 1, you're going to keep your offense on the field, that's better for the league for sure. But it does take some of the strategy out of the league because now for the Eagles and the Bills, it's not 1st and 10, it's 1st and 9. And it's cool for those teams that they have the advantage of not having to get all 10 yards and still being able to move the chains. But I do like the idea of when you get to 4th and 1 or 2, that you actually have to run a football play as opposed to just having humanity fall forward. And I know both teams have not been as successful with it the last couple of years as they were when the play was first brought in. But it's still a little bit of a cheat code. And as a football fan, I would like to see more football. I want to see a play drawn up. Give me some sort of trap block or a play action pass or a rollout, as opposed to I'm going to snap the ball and 18 people are going to go forward and I'm going to get my 3 feet that way. Secondly, and more importantly, the other reason I don't like this is not even about the quarterback sneak part. It's about the fact that a lot of running plays are augmented because the offense is now allowed to push the ball carrier forward. And it's, of all the things that we already have that favor offense, I don't see why we have to have this one too. For the longest time, this was not something the league did. You couldn't push a runner. You couldn't aid a runner in that way. It is impossible for a defense to be able to hang in when an offense wants to push their runner forward, because you think about how the play works. Ball, whether it's a quarterback or a running back, they move the ball, say 3, 4, 5 yards downfield. If the offensive lineman wants to help out that play, all they have to do is run forward and go downhill. So you've got the biggest guys who have made their blocks and are now behind the play. And if they want to help it, they run forward, they get momentum, and they push. The biggest guys on the field for the offense are in a perfect position to help this play, to help this ball carrier go forward. On the flip side, if you're a defensive lineman, well, you're going to be in the same spot on the field as the offensive lineman, but you want the ball to go the other way. So no, for a defensive lineman to be able to offset what an offensive lineman is doing, they have to run past the ball, turn around, and then come forward to get any momentum going. There's no way they have a chance to match what the offensive lineman can do by just coming downhill. And the guys who could, in theory, on defense, go downhill in their direction and be able to offset the offensive lineman, they're like 190-pound defensive backs. They don't have a chance. So the way this play is set up, where you can aid a runner going forward, is ridiculously tilted to the offensive side of the field. And we already have enough rules that help the offense out. So why are we keeping this one in? And when it comes to player safety, I know, people for the most part kind of roll their eyes at the idea that this play could cause somebody to get hurt. And I do understand that to a degree. The concern I have goes back to a Bills-Jets game from a couple years ago, where noted idiot Michael Clemens, when the Bills were trying to push, I don't know if it was Josh Allen or James Cook, were doing this where 3 or 4 offensive linemen were pushing the ball carrier downfield. The Jets weren't stopping the play. So Michael Clemens, in his attempt to stop the play, ran and just dove on the pile. Now, again, Michael Clemens is one of the more reckless players in the NFL. But it only takes one to cause an injury. And I do wonder if there's enough of an idiot in the NFL, and in a league with 2,000 players, I guarantee there's a giant handful of idiots. When is it going to happen that someone will look at the pile going forward and believe the only way they can prevent a first down, the only way they can prevent a touchdown, is by just diving at everybody's knees and taking people out? Or doing something like Michael Clemens did, leaping on the pile and twisting a knee or an ankle in a bad direction. That, to me, are the main reasons why the tush push itself, the quarterback sneak part of it, as much as I don't like it, I don't think is the big problem. I think the bigger problem is the piles of humanity 4 yards downfield that are adding 4, 5, 6, 7 yards onto a running play that essentially has been stopped, that would have been stopped 5 years ago, that is now being allowed to happen now. And while I don't think there is as much an injury risk as maybe what Sean McDermott was alluding to when he was on the competition committee about the quarterback sneak play, I do think we are 1 or 2 idiots from having a very serious injury on the back end of one of these piles. Because when you're a defensive player, there really is no good way to stop this play. And I know you might want to say, well, tackle the guy to the ground. In a game and a season where you have 1,400 plays, there's going to be a few where you don't get a guy to the ground right away. And when the rules ridiculously favor the offense, I think you are asking for a defensive player to do something stupid and cause something dangerous to not only opposing players, but potentially their own teammates on the field. And this is a play that has been out of the league for a long time that you could outlaw in a second by just saying you cannot any longer help a runner forward from behind, the rule the league had in place for any number of years before now. That's going to do it for me today. I appreciate everybody watching and listening. Like I said, I hope everybody has a good Easter. Enjoy your weekend. Hope you get lots of candy. Hope the Easter Bunny is good to you. We'll be back again on Monday. I'm Thad Brown. Thanks for watching the Endgame. The news is next right here in Rochester First. We'll see you after the weekend.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.